Hi everyone, and welcome to this webinar delivered to you by HealthWISE Nutrition and Dietetics. HealthWISE is a not-for-profit organisation that delivers mental health, allied health and Aboriginal health services across regional Queensland and New South Wales. My name is Zoe and my job at HealthWISE is to deliver dietitian services. Before we get started, HealthWISE would like to acknowledge that we operate and function on the lands of the traditional custodians. We pay respect to these lands and all that they provide for us. We acknowledge and pay respect to the ancestors that walked and managed these lands for many generations before us. We acknowledge and recognise all Aboriginal people who have come from their own country and who have now come to call this country home. We acknowledge our elders, past and present, who are our knowledge holders, teachers and pioneers. We acknowledge our youth who are our hope for a brighter and stronger future and who will be our future leaders. And we acknowledge and pay respect to our community members who have gone before us and recognise their contribution to our people and community. Today's webinar is about how to help your fussy eater, so we'll include some tips to optimise their nutrition and increase their food variety. Before we get started, I just want to give a bit of a background about the importance of nutrition in children. So it's essential for growth and development. It's also important to prevent nutrition deficiencies, such as iron, vitamin D, which are essential for growth and development. It's important for the development of oral motor skills and speech. So we use the same muscles for eating as we do for speech. So it's important that when children progress through different textures of food and as their diet progresses, that they use different muscles, and this helps them down the track when they start to form speech. It's also important to maintain energy and concentration and develop fine motor skills. So if they're feeding themselves, touching food, cooking food, those kinds of things. And it's also essential for the formation of healthy habits and a healthy relationship with food. So that first 5 years of a child's life is really essential in developing those healthy habits and getting a really good basis for nutrition. It gets really hard to change those habits the longer that they've been around, so going into adolescence and adulthood. What is fussy eating? Most children will go through a period of fussy eating at some point in their life. Typically, it resolves on its own. However, it can be really stressful and overwhelming for parents because you're worried that they're getting the right nutrition in. So some signs of fussy eating is that they start to avoid foods that they previously liked or they previously ate with no problems. They frequently refuse food. They might start having meltdowns over trying new food and become really overwhelmed. They might dislike a wide variety of foods rather than just a few. And they might just have a small number of frequently requested foods or foods that they feel safe that they want all the time. So when is it more than just being fussy? There are a number of conditions that can present as fussy eating, but there's something more serious going on. So this can be things like eating disorders where there might be body or weight concerns, frequent dieting restriction, those sorts of things. Autism spectrum disorder or ADHD, there can be certain restrictions or avoidance of food with certain textures or colours. There might be a fear of food because of a trauma surrounding a certain food, causing them to avoid foods that are similar, so an allergy or a choking incident or something. Could be an underlying illness or infection or gastrointestinal condition, so there might be nauseous, loss of appetite, they might have gastrointestinal upset and pain, and this will cause them to avoid foods. It could also be a food allergy or intolerance. So that could present, intolerances will present similarly to gastrointestinal conditions with stomach upset. And food allergies, there might be rashes, swelling, difficulty breathing, those kinds of things. So if you do think it's something along these lines and it's more serious, it is really important to seek advice from your GP. They'll be able to direct you to the right health professional to get you the right support. So before I jump into tips on how to help your fussy eater, I just want to chat about the SOS steps to feeding. So it is just important to have this as a background knowledge, just to know while you're progressing with your fussy child. So there are a lot of steps before actually eating. So this includes tolerating the food, so just being around it, being able to look at it, this kind of thing. That can be even really hard for children that are really fussy. They don't even want to be next to the food. They will then interact with the food, so using utensils or preparing food, those kinds of things. Smelling, so just being like smelling in the odor in the room, actually picking it up and smelling it. Then there's touch, so this can be picking it up, touching it, playing with it, putting it to their mouth, that kind of thing. Then tasting, so not necessarily eating it or liking it, but they might chew it, spit it out, chew a little bit, swallow it, so they don't like it, but they're having a go. And then there's actually eating the food and finishing the food. So it's important to be aware of this when you're stepping through, because it's small milestones and it does take a long time to have a fussy eater be okay with new foods, depending on how bad it might be. So it's important to acknowledge if they're touching the food, that's a great step. They might not be tasting it, but that's just, they're still working towards eating. So just keep this in the background. So what can you do to help? A really good overarching principle to start with that will help throughout the whole experience is the division of responsibility created by Ellen Satter, who is a dietitian. So you are responsible for what, when, and where your child eats, and your child is responsible for how much and whether. So children have really good hunger and fullness cues. They don't think about social reasons to eat or emotional reasons to eat or things that adults often factor into their food choices. They just eat when they're hungry and they finish when they're full. So you can trust that your child is going to be getting the right amount of food, but you need to be contributing to what that is, when they can eat, and where that will be. Another thing that's really helpful is role modeling. So as you know, kids learn by doing. They copy everything that adults do, especially those that they idolize. So avoid labeling food as good versus bad. If we have good foods and bad foods, they'll want the good foods all the time rather than just having them equal, and they just choose what they think might be good at that moment. Avoid comments about body and weight, and also avoid diet talk or practicing dieting in front of children. They will absorb more than this than you think, and it will impact on their relationship that they have with food and their own body later on down the track, and may impact on their development of eating disorders or disordered eating. Avoid vocalizing your own personal dislikes. Kids will more than likely avoid that food as well, just to be like mum or dad. Eat regular meals, so show that regular routine eating. Children need to eat more regularly, however, just because they have smaller tummies and eat smaller amounts. Eat a wide variety of food with different colors, textures, flavors, shapes, and smells. So this can let them know that it's normal to have different foods all the time and not just have the same thing all the time. And show an interest in foods and cooking and shopping and all of those things, and show enjoyment when you're experiencing new foods as well. So they know that you're not scared of it, that it's a fun experience. The family meal is a really important tool to use when you have a fussy eater. So make sure you're eating together at the table, you turn screens off, and you focus on quality family time. This makes it just really calm, enjoyable, comfortable. So it's a really good environment to try new things, have foods that they might not like so much, because they feel calm and comfortable and happy. Involve kids in the planning, shopping, and cooking and serving of foods. This can be really fun for them, in addition to giving them a little bit of control and choice over food. So give them options. Do you want broccoli or sweet potato with this meal, or chicken or beef? And let them help in that planning, so they feel like they're contributing, and then it's more fun. They're more likely to eat it too if they've been a part of it, rather than just having it plucked in front of them. Present foods in inviting and fun ways, obviously when time permits, but using cookie cutters and things to make shapes. They might just play with it, but if we go back to those steps to eating, that's pretty high up. That's just before tasting. So if they're playing with something that they previously didn't like, then that's a progress. Try not to cook separate meals, so just adjust to suit individual needs. Say you have a vegetarian in the family, cook like a stir fry with some veggies and noodles, and then cook chicken and tofu separately, or something like that, so that everyone's eating similar meals. Make mealtime enjoyable, play games, and set traditions. So by games, I don't mean board games or card games, but things like, what's your favorite part of the day today? Or what are you looking forward to next week? Just to make it like a fun, quality family experience. And finally, let kids get messy. So touching food is an important part of the process, as we've discussed a couple of times now. And it prevents that development of a fear of food too. If you're constantly cleaning them and worried about food, they're going to be worried about it as well. So this are some tips for trying new foods. Try them often. make it a normal experience without pressure rather than something that happens occasionally that they just got to push through and they know is not going to happen very often. Make it normal. Only have one new food at a time and make sure you've got safe foods with it. So say they love cheese or yogurt, which is common with fussy eaters, they'll love dairy foods. Have some strawberries on the side or some carrot sticks or something that they're not that comfortable with. Just having that safe food kind of makes that meal still safe for them. Try foods multiple times. It takes 10 to 15 times for a kid to like a new food, so don't give up on the first couple of tries. They might like it eventually. A really helpful tool can be a no thank you plate. So just sits on the side of the meal. You can have their new food on the plate and they just can pop that on if they don't want it and they don't feel comfortable with it, and that just makes them feel more safe and comfortable, like they're not going to have a meltdown about it. Same with separating foods. So you can have them like the picture on the screen there. You can separate them a little bit. Having new foods, touching foods they like can sometimes be a bit triggering and anxiety provoking. So it's nice to just have them all separated. For some kids anyway. Try not to use punishments or bribes. Keep the experience relaxed and positive. If they don't try the new food, they don't try it. One day they might touch it, one day they might smell it, and just try not to bribe them by using foods, again, with that reward system of food. Use safe foods to bridge new foods with similar colours, flavours, or textures. So they might like carrots but not sweet potato. Cut the sweet potato in a similar shape to the carrots and see if that might work, and slowly sort of progress foods that way. Get children learning about food nutrition, obviously age appropriate, but if they learning about cooking and how food helps us grow and learn and breathe and run and all of those sorts of things, they might become a bit more interested in eating in general, which might be encouraging to try new foods and explore that experience. Let children explore foods and feed themselves. This just gives them a sense of control over the meal and the whole new experience. Discuss textures, smells, and flavors of new foods before trying to help alleviate fear of the unknown. So this might just, if you explain this is going to be a little bit salty or this is going to be soft, or talk about the colors and those sorts of things, they might just feel a little bit more comfortable. If all else fails, focus on key nutrients. So if you're trying new foods at dinner time, maybe throughout the rest of the day, focus on those key nutrients that they need within their safe foods and the foods that they will eat. So there are more nutrients that children need than this. These are just probably the top 4. So this is protein, which is really important for muscle development. It helps with breaking down foods. It's important for their hormones. There's a lot of functions that protein has in the body. So this is found in meat, dairy, legumes like beans or lentils, fish, tofu, or eggs. We also need energy, so this is just energy that helps our heart pump, our lungs breathe, our muscles work. So it's found in all foods, but it's high in fats and oils. So this is things like avocado or nuts, or cooking oils like olive oil, sunflower oil, those sorts of things. Iron is also really important. So this is found in red meat. It can be found in fortified cereals. So this is where iron has been added into the cereal. So Wheat Bix, Nutri-Grain, a lot of the common cereals have iron added into them. You can see it on the nutrition panel on the back. Legumes again, so this is beans, lentils, and then your leafy greens like spinach. And then lastly, calcium. So this often isn't a big problem in fussy eaters. Like I said before, they eat a lot of dairy. If they are lactose intolerant, there are alternative milks. You just have to make sure they have calcium added in. So if you look at the nutrition panel, it should be around 300 milligrams per serve of that milk or yogurt or whatever dairy alternative that you might be buying. It's also found in tofu and then any canned fish that includes the bones, like sardines. So with supplements, it can be needed, but it's important to not use them unless indicated by a health professional. So unless your child has a deficiency, which will be shown through a blood test or any other tests, then they should be okay without supplements, and it's important to follow a health professional's guide when it comes to that. So some general tips Avoid letting kids fill up on milk or juice. Although it is a drink and it does provide nutrients, it can fill them up and prevent them from wanting to eat a proper meal with fiber and colour and trying new foods and those sorts of things. So try to just offer water between meals. Provide options at meal times whilst avoiding putting too much on the plate. So you don't want to overwhelm them, but also just provide options so that if they don't eat certain things, they might eat some others. Trust your child. As I said before, they have innate hunger and fullness cues. So they just listen to when they're hungry and they listen to when they're full. They don't think about what other people are thinking about their food or whether they're feeling sad or happy. They just eat when they're hungry and stop when they're full. Don't stress if they skip one meal. A healthy child will be okay after skipping one meal. Just calmly investigate why they might be doing that. Ask them why they're feeling sad about the meal or stressed about the meal. Try to figure out why. If you understand the why, it's easier to overcome it and try to fix that and work around it, rather than just forcing or bribing them to eat. Avoid substituting meals because you're worried about their nutrition. So by that, I mean taking away that family meal that everybody has to eat and giving them something that they love, like chicken nuggets or something, for example. They will learn that they can get what they want if they refuse to eat, and they'll just keep doing that over and over. And then that's really hard to reverse that. Try not to use food as rewards. So this contributes to just a bit of an unhealthy relationship with food. Try to use things like games, special time with mum or dad, or activities or things that they really like to do or enjoy. These are better rewards. Focus on positive behavior and praise small improvements. So if we go back to that steps to eating, focus on those little steps towards eating. Focus on the small things like smelling or touching food as well, because these are big improvements and it takes time to get there. Most importantly, be patient and be forgiving on yourself. It's okay to be overwhelmed. It is stressful. It's your child. You care about their nutrition, but you're doing everything right, and improving fussy eating does take time. So these are our contact details. We have a number of offices, but our head office is probably the best one to go to just for general, and they can direct you. We do have a number of dietitians, so if anything in this webinar made you think you might need some extra support, just call us and you can book in, get some individual help for you and your child. But thank you for listening to the webinar today.